Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Now, today I'm looking at a book I've looked at before, and I've certainly looked at the series of books which have been produced. These are practitioner guides. They're published by WILDY, SIMMONDS and Hill publishers. This one is the Practitioner's Guide to Inheritance Act Claims, now in a third edition. It's been written by Nasreen Pearce. There's the book there, it's falling apart at the moment. Stand it up properly, we'll look at the book in a minute. The review title that I've given it is A Most Welcome New Third Edition on Inheritance Law in the WILDY Practitioner Guide series, and that's exactly what you're getting. And I'll make sure it doesn't fall down again. Let's put this up so the stand is okay. There's the book anyway, so it's a hardback. A cream colour. There's the spine at the back, and then on the back you've got some detail and quite a lot of information about what's in the book, and of course it explains who Nasreen Pearce is. She's a retired circuit judge and was formerly a district judge in the principal registry of the Family Division. She has written widely on family law and a contributor to the Family Court Practice. That's that book there. Now this is the book itself. Just look, opening it up. The index is by page numbering, so it's relatively easy to find things. This is very much the house style of WILDY. There, so it says page references to page numbers. Have to be a bit careful because sometimes they use paragraph numbering. Then you've got at the back of it some appendices, 13 of them in fact. Then at the front, there is the first page there. And then after that you've got some blurb about the WILDY publication itself. Then you've got the contents section, detailed contents running all the way through. It is by, you can see it's by paragraph numbering, so don't get confused between the paragraph numbering and the page numbering. And what you've got, of course, at the end are you've got 13 chapters and 13 appendices, then the index at the back. You've got the table of cases nicely laid out. The references are to page numbers with the cases, likewise with the statutes, and you've also got some statutory instruments, and in addition to that you've got guides and codes of practice, international materials, and then you get to the introduction itself. Background, it sets out where we've come from with this particular set of rules. It has long been a characteristic of English law that provided a person has testamentary capacity and complies with the formalities relating to the making of a valid will, he, she may in his/her will make provision for the disposal of his/her entire estate on his/her death, as he, she chooses, and his/her estate will devolve in accordance with the terms of the will. So that's where we are, okay, inheritance. You can see the book itself running all the way through. It's a really good book, and I have to say I'm very, very pleased that WILDY's are still publishing this book, because it's an important book and I think it has quite a wide appeal. So what do we say about the book? Well, in this short review, let me talk a little bit about this, because as I say, it's part of the guide series. The guide was originally published as Inheritance Act Claims, and Nasreen Pearce continues to offer us what is described, quote, as a clear, comprehensive and easily accessible and practical guide to the provisions of the Inheritance Provision for Family and Dependants Act 1975 as amended. Now, you've seen from what I've said already that we're using lots of words and it's complex. So it's not the simplest area of law by any means, but it is important to know your rights and to know how to go about doing things. And in fact, this book is just what your practice will need to keep you up to date with the legislation, because we feel that this book is also most useful for, as I've indicated, unrepresented parties who are not using legal advisors. Such is the welcoming detail which Nasreen gives us here. And of course we have to face the reality that a lot of people today are not represented. They are litigants in person. The guide sets out in detail the nitty-gritty as follows. It gives the background to the legislation, preconditions and time limits for making a claim, categories of those who are entitled to make a claim and grounds on which a claim may be made. And of help to us is the consideration of matters to which the court must have regard in deciding a claim and the court's powers to make orders, if it comes to that. And that will include, of course, the powers of the court in respect of dispositions intended to defeat a claim. And it also looks at the assets from which financial provision under the Act may be made, and the obligations of personal representatives and trustees. Again, I think that's important because sometimes people can have this responsibility foisted on them, thrust upon them. So therefore you've got a book here which will give you some help if you say, help, I need to know what's going on. This is a book which actually is quite cheap. It will give you the information you need. Now the third edition covers the leading authority of ILET and Blue Cross. ILET is well known, of course, to quite a lot of people because it's been reported widely in most of the law journals, and other cases, of course, are listed here too. Pearce examines the effect of the UK Supreme Court's first ruling under the Act, and reviews also the meaning of reasonable financial provisions, testamentary freedom, the position of charities as beneficiaries, the factors that are relevant to the exercise of judicial discretion when deciding what if any award should be made for a claimant, and issues relating to grounds of appeal. So you're getting a pretty good limited service, but a very good service, straight from the people who know all about this area. So you can have confidence that this actually is probably one of the best short pieces of advice you can get, and depending on what the problem is that you're actually facing, but at least it will give you some perspective on the possible problems you might see arising. Now, changes introduced by the Civil Partnership Act 2004, the Marriage Same-Sex Couples Act 2013, the Presumption of Deaths Act 2013, the Inheritance and Trustees Powers Act 2014, and the consequential amendments made to the Civil Procedure Rules, CPR Part 57, and the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Act 2008 are covered in most welcome detail here. And again, as I've said, it depends very much on what the issues are that you've got. Now let me just run through what's actually in the book, in case, depending on what you're looking for, because depending on what you are actually seeking, the guide reviews the following areas which you may be looking for information about: the recent case law on domicile and proof of foreign marriages, the extension of the meaning of the child of the family as a consequence of the Inheritance and Trustees Powers Act 2014, the issue of assumption of responsibility and financial contribution, forfeiture rules, mutual wills, an important area at the moment, proprietary estoppel and constructive trusts, always interesting, especially in relation to the interest of cohabitants, property held jointly, and that's again important with so many people no longer marrying, so therefore you've got other rules to look at. Application to set aside orders on the grounds of non-disclosure, procedure for making online applications for a copy of a death certificate, and for a standing search. Again, that's an area which is going to have to develop as we enter the fourth industrial revolution. The jurisdiction to make orders against foreign property, always important as well, the global economy. The European Union Succession Regulation 250/2012, insofar as it may be relevant to this book and your concerns. So you've got a substantial amount of detail there. Now let me conclude by thanking Nasreen Pearce very much for producing this and for WILDY for publishing it. It runs to about 450 pages with 13 chapters and 13 appendices, covering a range of sample forms and precedents. That's in the appendices themselves. The text of the Act and the relevant provisions of CPR are also included for ease of reference. So thank you very much, Nasreen, for updating what I think is an excellent guide. And the publication date is given as August 2017. There's no statement as to what the law is, but I take it that the law is as stated around that time. There's the book again. And then there's the spine, and then there's the back. You can see some of what I've actually put in the review is actually contained in the back in its own little way. It's actually slightly different the way it's worded there, but I wanted to give you a flavour of the contents. Powers of the court to make orders, because one of the problems is you will have occasion when there are disputes. I've used this book, in fact, in the past when I've had to advise people under direct professional access, and I've said to them, right, this is the conference, this is what it's going to cost you. Go and buy the book and read the book, because you may as well get a lot of information initially from these guides, which are really first class, and then take it accordingly. Obviously, do use legal services if you have to, but see if you can't possibly avoid litigation. Procedure, here we go, very useful part on procedure. Let me just show you also the appendices at the back. This is the methods of search. There we go. That's appendix A10. This is the electronic side, preservation of electronic documents, how you go about searching. A lot of that information, which I've mentioned to you, is going to become much more relevant in the next few years as we see these big changes coming in. There's the book. Thank you very much to everybody concerned for it. A great big thank you to Wilders as well, and Andrew Rennick for producing this, and good luck with whatever your advice is that you seek. Thank you. Bye-bye.